Hello, podcast listeners. Today we're going to talk about a new metric for emotional health. Now, our popular culture has become pretty obsessed about attachment styles, but attachment experts tell us it's not a style, but rather a location where we fall on the developmental attachment continuum. We all are somewhere along that path, depending upon the health of our attachment to self and others. But I would like to propose a new metric to identify where we fall along this path, because I have found a pretty accurate way to assess our emotional health, which is our ability to self-nurture. Children who receive consistent nurture from their attachment figure will internalize it. They will learn to self-nurture, such as participating in their own food preparation, cleaning their room, or caring for their body. When a baby's bodily needs are met regularly and consistently, and they are given consistent comfort, and when a child's feelings are attuned to, they find themselves becoming mature and responsible young people. For the most part, no one needs to explicitly teach them how to clean their room, want to be on time, or take their hygiene seriously, because they have a natural propensity toward this. They have a natural inclination to care for themselves and others because they have learned through regular nurture from their caregiver that they matter. And this shows up everywhere in their lives. Unfortunately, consistent nurture is rare, and many infants' physical and emotional needs are not met regularly. Many, if not most, young children are not attuned to, and they're left to cry it out. The outcome of such nurture deficits cause children and adults to become stuck at a young developmental age, not willing to take on the responsibility of nurturing themselves, but expecting others to do this for them. Now, as adults, they might appear high functioning and successful at glance, but you will notice if you spend time with one of these people, there is a child within that still expects others to nurture them. It's like this part of them is attempting to finally procure something that they never adequately received. So instead of taking responsibility for themselves, they continue to outsource their nurture to others in order to feel loved and important. The problem is it is never enough, because fulfillment ultimately comes only from becoming that nurturing attachment figure for ourselves. I see this unwillingness to self-nurture show up most often related to food, because food is the quintessential symbol of nurture. The words nurture and nourish are related, both derive from the Latin root word nutri, which literally means to nurse from a breast. This makes sense given that breastfeeding provides both food and comfort to a baby simultaneously. What nurture truly is emblematic of is love, and love is necessary for human development. I remember as a nutrition major in college learning about a disease called marasmus, in which an infant who is given adequate food but doesn't have enough nurturing touch will die. Today we call this failure to thrive, which often confounds doctors, as children will receive tube feedings well above their necessary caloric needs, but continue to be emaciated. It's yet another example of something the medical establishment fails to recognize: the power of love and the power of its evil counterpart, the absence of love, which we would call emotional neglect. I view a young person's restricted eating as a silent plea to her attachment figures for nurture. It's just less risky to starve ourselves than to ask a cold parent to love us. When we experience neglect as a child, it feels empty in our gut, and filling ourselves with food is far from ideal, but it does numb the ache, at least temporarily. Popping a bottle in the mouth of a baby who is crying to be held is less vulnerable and more convenient for many parents. Food is not love, but at least it temporarily fills the void or gets us the attention that is too scary to ask for explicitly. When I first meet someone and they tell me they enjoy cooking, I suspect them to be an emotionally healthy person, and I'm usually not wrong. Someone who hates cooking and outsources their nurture to others by eating out frequently or who skips meals often is usually someone who is not emotionally mature. I had a friend who was highly functional in society, well liked with a good job, and who appears to be a happy and outgoing person. Yet, as you spend time with her, you will hear another story, one where she sees herself as a perpetual victim because she's not married. She is not grateful for all she has, but rather focuses on what she doesn't have. And she finds herself idealizing marriage, no matter what us married friends tell her. And this fosters jealousy towards those of us who are married. Now, this manifests in her relationship with food, as she refuses to cook for herself and spends many thousands of dollars eating out most nights as a way to avoid being alone. Ironically, she also laments about her financial stress, but she blames it on being single. Another metric for assessing attachment health is someone's willingness to drive themselves. When we are in the driver's seat of a car, we are symbolically in touch with our anger, and we're in a position of control over our lives. I find many of my clients will have panic attacks specifically while they're driving, and others will feel anger that usually goes suppressed. People who don't want to feel their feelings or take control over their lives will often avoid driving altogether. However, oftentimes they are happy with being driven by someone else because that gives them a sense of nurture that they refuse to give to themselves. I had one friend who was in denial, refusing to take ownership of her life, who had to drive herself on a 4-hour road trip. She made it, but barely, as she sabotaged herself by making sure that the phone she brought with her was nearly dead, and she needed that phone for directions. Now, this is a person who is incredibly responsible and detail oriented. She is a professional bookkeeper and property manager. Yet she suddenly forgets to make sure her phone is charged when she has no one else to drive her on her road trip. The dying phone serves as a needed distraction from keeping her connected to her power, which has the potential to actually change her life. Power is threatening to many people, as it might result in them choosing to be alone. Self-nurture is also evidenced by our living spaces and how we relate to them. Healthy people will decorate their home in a way that is both attractive and comfortable, and they will exert time and energy in maintaining their home and their yard. They will often have houseplants and clean but cozy homes. They won't furnish or clean their home in a way to impress others or prove themselves, but to satisfy themselves. When you enter their home, you will feel at home yourself because you are entering a space that represents how they feel at peace with themselves. In contrast, I think of the homes as a child that we children would deem haunted, which were often inhabited by old people who would let their homes fall apart, and they were spooky. The spookiest part was that these old people almost never left their house, which left it up to us children in our imaginations to depict what they looked like. Yet I also knew a good share of old people, such as my grandfather, who would keep up their houses or pay other people to do it for them. They would leave their houses regularly. The difference between the two boils down to their ability to self-nurture. My father is now in the category of a spooky old person as he refuses to care for his home, and it's now to the point that it is apparent to all. A common way that we lack self-nurture manifests when people always want to be heard, but are unwilling to listen to others. Their young self was not adequately heard, and now they're attempting to make up for it at everyone else's expense. I spent several hours recently with someone like this. She's not a bad person, and I do enjoy listening to much of what she had to say, but when I arrived home, I was exhausted as my brain just felt understimulated for way too long. It's not engaging to listen but not be heard. And I refuse to put myself in that same situation again. It is draining. In contrast, being in the presence of a self-nurturing person is nurturing. They are people who make good eye contact and are prone to listen. They are authentic without an agenda, and there's no threat. They will speak about their feelings and validate others. They will make others feel seen and heard versus merely seeking to be seen and heard by us. Now, some type of people will find this person off-putting because it makes them feel too vulnerable to feel seen and heard. They don't trust a nurturing presence, and they find it evocative. They will project sinister motivations onto a self-nurturing person, such that they might be manipulative or disingenuous. Many of these people will feel ambivalence with such a healthy person. Part of them loves the attunement, feeling heard, while another part doesn't trust it. When we're around people who refuse to self-nurture, we can easily fall into a trap. It can feel good to cook for them or drive for them or listen to them, and they may ideal us for what we're giving them. It feels amazing to feel needed at times, but we have to be savvy because for someone like this who refuses to self-nurture, it is never enough. Giving them our undivided attention, our help, or our generosity is like feeding a black hole, because the only thing that ultimately fills them is what they give themselves. We all need love at every phase of our development, but most of us didn't receive adequate nurture, especially during our most vulnerable phase in our childhood. The good news is we don't have to stay stuck. We can take the reins of our journey by giving ourselves the love that was withheld from us. This allows us to become emotionally mature, responsible, and integrated humans. This frees us from depending on others to deliver something they cannot give consistently. And instead of us needing them, their presence becomes a welcome bonus, but nothing more. This, friend, is how we participate in our own liberation, rescuing ourselves from emptiness. No matter where we currently stand on the attachment continuum, we can arrive at a place of maturity, and it doesn't take long. All we need is a commitment to ourselves that we are worth the work because we are. And the work isn't laborious or draining, but rejuvenating and delightful. Nurturing ourselves is, well, nurturing. Thank you for listening today. Please share this with a friend. Please subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already, and please give me an awesome review. Thank you.